Hello everyone, welcome to the second edition of the Formula E Addicts Podcast. I'm Edward Hunter, I'm with Jack Pickering,
Hello.
Jack Giordmaina, and our new special guest, Joe Jones.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm Jack. I was in the first one. I won't be called Jack in this. I'll be called Picko to avoid confusion because there's two Jacks in this, and it may get a bit confusing later on. But yeah, I've loved the first season of Formula E, and I can't wait for season 2.
I'm Jack, the other Jack Giordmaina from Formula E Zone. I've been the one putting all the latest news possible that I can get onto the FE Addicts page, so you're always up to date in what is going on.
And I'm Joe Jones. This is my first episode, as Ed said, and I actually didn't really get interested into Formula E initially through the motorsport side. I was actually quite a kind of a car enthusiast, especially with electric vehicles, and Formula E has actually turned me into a motorsport fan. So, and I even want to have a career in it. So I think it's the bee's knees, and want to contribute how I can to this. So yeah.
The bee's knees, it is indeed. I'm Ed. I'm film editor, going to university in London. I got into Formula E quite early on. I think started watching it right from the start. Definitely involved the motorsport side. I was big into sort of F1 and rallying and all those sorts of things. So that's where my sort of angle of it coming is. And I'm now recently I became the head admin of the Formula E Addicts group, and Jack Picko is my right hand man, basically. Let's get on with the podcast now. Before we get into all the Formula E news, there's a somber note to start with. As I was uploading the first edition on I think the same night or in the morning after, I checked and I heard the terrible news of Jules Bianchi's passing at the age of 25. And there's not, at this point not a whole lot extra to say. I'm sure you saw that moving sort of ceremony they did on the grid at the Hungarian Grand Prix, where they flew in the Bianchi family from Nice. And in terms of Formula E, I guess the most relevant thing to point out is Jules' contribution to the very first test car, the formulaic. But Jules drove it around a bit, and there are a couple of photos of him with the car. So I guess he is partly to thank for the success that the championship has had.
Yeah, because actually the formulaic car was, I think, made with a bit of help from Mercedes and lots of other people, and with Jules driving it and a few other people driving it. It was actually part of what was used to kind of convince all the people across the FIA and to get a kind of good backing behind the project at the beginning. So it certainly was actually crucial to getting the championship off the ground.
Yeah, it was a big coup for a gag. Pico, any thoughts from you about Jules?
Well, yeah, he was such a nice guy, and he was such a great talent. He was a future Formula 1 world champion for sure. Whether he would have joined Formula E after that, unfortunately, we will never know. But back in Putrajaya, which was the first race after Bianchi's incident in Japan, Sam Bird won it and dedicated it to him. And on the Saturday after his passing, Sam Bird was on 5 Live, and he was very tearful and emotional in that. But he was a fantastic talent, and he is a big loss to motorsport.
Yeah, of course. Sam Bird in 2010 was a teammate to Jules Bianchi in GP2, so it's no wonder they were so close. But even though Jules is gone, I guess we have to move on, and I'm sure Jules will be very happy to see all developments that are happening in Formula E at the moment, and be very proud of the little bit that he's contributed to get it up and running. So anyway, I guess the second thing we had to talk about here was a driver that had been re-signed recently for next season, and that is Jerome D'Ambrosio, who's re-signed with the Dragon Racing team, which was the same team he was with through the whole of the first season, and scored some decent results, a win in Berlin. Yeah, he definitely got stronger as it got on, and I think the Dragon Racing team realised that he's a valuable asset. Quite likely they'll re-sign the man who was his teammate for the most part of the year, Loic Duval, who is, of course, the World Endurance Championship driver. And D'Ambrosio seems to get a little bit of flack because his F1 career wasn't quite so successful. He had the spell with Marussia and with Lotus for one race. Yeah, Fernando D'Ambrosio was in a test driver role. Now this is definitely more up his alley, I think.
I think with Jerome is an unbelievably talented driver. He obviously didn't get really to show that in Formula One in his one season that was there. He was quick there in Formula One. We can't discount that. But he's very good. I think he grew with Dragon Racing because Dragon Racing improved dramatically through the season. They were sort of stop-start, the beginning of the season testing back last year. They weren't really anywhere. Then Puigdemont, they flew up and were to a force to be reckoned with. And we thought that would sustain. But, they sort of faded away and then they came back strong and Jerome came back really strong towards the end of the season. And, he's someone who's been in that car now. And I think with drivers already being in that car, the way that they drive is more efficient than other drivers who will be coming in. It's such a hard learning curve to actually learn with these cars and to drive them as efficiently and make them work, basically. And I think Jerome mastered that towards the end of the season, so he's a huge asset for Dragon next year.
Indeed. Sorry about the little sounds you're hearing in the background. That's a couple of us typing into the Skype chat.
I turned it off, sorry.
That's fair enough. So good news for Jerome, but there are a couple other drivers who we've seen are not quite so certain that they'll be back next year. Karun Chandhok, who we talked about a little bit in our talk about Mahindra's struggles last year in the previous podcast. Karun he's come out this week, I think, and he told motorsport.com, I believe, he said something along the lines of that he was looking at his options elsewhere and he wasn't really expecting to be re-signed. He wasn't expecting to get a seat in Formula E for the coming season, and he's not been tested. They put Turvey and Antonio Garcia.
And Bruno Senna did the original.
Yeah, and Bruno Senna. Two drivers who have driven for the Campos squad, who also manage Next TV and now recently acquired Mahindra. So the two other drivers who are a bit uncertain are Antonio Felix da Costa, who has basically said that DTM is his priority and there are a couple of rounds that clash with DTM. So team's probably taking that into account. It looks like he might be a bit unlikely to get, definitely not a full-time seat anyway. And Duran said that even though he's been testing with Team Aguri Donington recently, he said on Twitter that he was unsure that he would have the seat for Beijing, which I guess team would know better than him what his performance has been like over the past season. But he didn't seem too bad. He compared okay with Da Costa. In fact, towards the end of the season, had a few stirring performances, particularly in Moscow and London, I think, kind of stick out.
I mean, something I think that's quite interesting about Duran is, I know that he's had quite a few sponsors, which I think Jack G, I think maybe you might have mentioned in your article, maybe it was the e-racing one, but he's got, I think it's Telcel have supported him throughout his career, and they do sponsorship on the ex-Amelin Aguri car, as well as I think it's Van Dutch. So I was wondering if maybe his seat is partly, maybe not paid for directly, but that the sponsors sponsor the Aguri squad, and in turn he also gets the seat. I don't know if that was a contributing factor or not.
I think Duran will be driving for Team Aguri next season. I think it would be, not because I think we have to remember with Salvador, he came in 4 years out of racing and, he wasn't very competitive at the beginning. I think he knows that himself. But as Ed mentioned, towards the end of the season, he grew, he got quicker, he got faster, he made less mistakes, and he became a much more complete driver. And with the sponsors, he has got the Van Dijk and the Telcel sponsors with him. And I think with Team Aguri losing Amelin as a main sponsor, Salvador sponsors, if they are going to help, if they've already put his sponsors on the car technically. Van Dijk was all over the front wing on Monday's test. So it would make sense to have him in the car if they need the extra money, which they probably will if they're lacking sponsorship.
Okay,
just before we move on with the Costa and Chandhok. It's sad that we could losing possibly two fantastic drivers, but we've all done these drivers pre-season. Well, it's like in pre-season before pre-season tests, and they haven't been driving the car. And if you're someone who's moving towards next season, trying out a new powertrain, you'd sort of want to be in that development phase, which Karun Chandhok nor Antonio Felix da Costa have been in. So to me, that sends out warning signals that they might not be involved in the sport next year.
Was it Pedro de la Rosa who did a test drive with Aguri?
Super Aguri Formula E, safe.
Yeah.
From what I've heard is that though he's been at Ferrari for a few years now, kind of doing the odd bit of testing, it's not like it doesn't seem like he's going to have a F1 seat. Is just because he's getting on a bit now, and I think for him, that I'm not an expert on this at all, but it sounds like it could be a really promising seat for him actually, and he's got experience and knows his stuff, so I'm sure that as well with his kind of development credentials that Team Aguri could definitely look favourably at him.
The thing about Pedro de la Rosa is that he joined the Hispania Racing team in 2012, I think, for a season. And the reason he did so, even though Hispania Racing team is a team that nobody rated particularly highly, as even amongst the new teams. So maybe the fire still does burn for Pedro. But saying that, I've also seen Tom Christiansen, and I've got a few pictures of the 9-time Le Mans winner Tom Christiansen sitting in the car. It was helmet on, so I presume he's done a little bit of testing for the team. I'm not sure. I'm definitely not sure that he's going to go for full-time drive, because if anything, I think he is 48 years old, and possibly even about the same age, maybe even older than De La Rosa, and he's officially retired from racing, unlike Pedro as well. So I doubt that we'd see him back, but we can but dream though, because that would be awesome to see Tom Christiansen on track.
What I'm surprised about actually is how there's only 4 drivers have been confirmed. Testing starts in 2 weeks, and hopefully I am going, and I don't know who's technically going to be. I don't know who's going to show up at this rate. It's going to be really weird just turning up to the door. Well, hopefully I have small inklings before I go, but it'd be weird that turning up. Well, who's going to drive the cars? It'd be a really interesting debate.
Yeah,
a lot of last-minute contract negotiations going on.
Thinking about it, last year, Charles Pic was effectively called up at the last minute to drive for Andretti in Beijing. He had done a few test races here or there, but we had no official confirmation that Charles was going to be racing. So
and same with Takuma Sato.
Yeah, same with Sato and a few other people, but yeah, hopefully it isn't as bad this year. And in terms of EDAMS, come on, they're surely going to go with Nico Prost and Seb Buemi again. That's pretty much. I'll be very surprised if they don't have it like that. But yeah,
yeah, I think the same. To be honest with you, I think most, even though it's not been confirmed, like Sam Bird is tested for Virgin Racing. So he wanted to be in the car. He said he wanted to stay next season. I can't see a reason why Virgin would drop him. So I think that would be confirmed. Sebastian Buemi and Nicolas Prost.
Didn't we? I don't want to interrupt you too quickly, Jack, but just speaking about Virgin, the World Touring Car Championship, the reigning champion at the moment, Jose Maria Lopez, has expressed interest in the second Virgin seat. He definitely seems like a talented driver from what we've seen in World Touring Car Championship. And of course, he's been involved with the Citroen team there as well. I guess he might fancy his chances in Formula E in place of Alguersuari, essentially.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him at one stage or for a couple of days at pre-season tests. Whether or not he'll be announced, I don't know. It's whenever Virgin will tell me, I'll probably try and poke the press officer to let me know. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he was down there for a couple of days.
It's a good point to move on, because I want to talk about the abandoned Miami race, which according to an article that I read and posted on there, has been abandoned thanks to environmentalists who were very upset about the race. They're adding some extra tarmac somewhere, which they didn't like, and also
where else have we heard this?
Yes, the Addicts Park protesters, of course, having a similar argument. Of course, different. I know a lot more about the Addicts Park scenario than I do about what happened in Miami. But the decision on whether Addicts Park is to continue is going to happen in September, after they've opened another round of fresh consultation with local residents. They've opened a little form where you can. I've entered it too, even though I don't live in Battersea per se. Just enter it and you just give your feedback to the race. Couple of loaded questions in there. We've got 2 similar sort of situations where there is a group that doesn't want the race to happen, and in Miami they've been able to. And Battersea, the battle is still ongoing, essentially. Anyway, all I was just going to say to finish off was that I think it's important that it's one of the things that the protesters were complaining about was that this race happened and it feels like we didn't get any real say in what happened and we're not being represented.
No.
Because apparently they said, friends of Battersea Park approved it, but we never got any consultation with them, and they felt that consultation was sort of mentioned, but they sort of were never kind of they never had that sort of, never felt that they had been spoken to about it. So I think it's important that they feel that, I think it's important. I don't agree with their position at all, but I think it's important that they feel at least that they're having some input. Fingers crossed that things turn out well there. So anyway, let's move on to the big shebang, which is Joe's piece here about the manufacturer's plans for Season 2.
Yes, very exciting. Now, I know...
Especially due to Venturi's news, publishing a little picture of the power unit today.
And some specs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think first off we should talk about what changes are allowed to be made, which essentially is not much. The power is staying the same in terms of the max power. The race thing could change, but in terms of motor design, that's not a massive concern. But the way that teams can capitalise on this is increase efficiency, improve cooling, and get not only a higher torque but also a better torque curve. So essentially what that means in the electric motor sense and how that can benefit the teams is in qualifying, etc., when they get out of a corner and need to bomb out of it. If a team gets a motor which has a really good torque curve and a high torque, though they're staying within the power limit, they can still get really good acceleration and therefore qualify higher up. So I think there's a kind of split of opinion on how much difference can be made, but I think personally that actually quite a bit of difference can be made if a team gets it right. I think it was, Jack, your piece on Venturi saying that efficiency is key, and I think they said it a few places. It was very interesting, actually, and I think that's what lots of the teams are looking at, how they can not only get better efficiency, because for when there were many problems, especially towards the beginning of max power overuse, what the teams have to do is not just say, oh, right, use 150 kilowatts. Because there are losses in the system, they have to code in, right, use 156 kilowatts because we think that about 6 kilowatts is going to be lost. I made that up, but... So if they can lose less energy, then they therefore get through the battery not as quickly, not have to lift and coast and etc., get better performance. So with Venturi, rumour has it that they've been working with Hewland on a new gearbox which improves cooling to the motor as well, which is good because often, I think it was with Degrassi, I don't know if it was his battery or his motor, but he had to take it easy often, and lots of the drivers did because they didn't want to overheat the motor. So what Venturi reportedly have been working on is ways to increase the kind of flow, I guess it was maybe air or possibly liquid cooling, to mean that they don't have to kind of take it easy as much. The new design with, again reportedly, with Hewland is only a 4-gear gearbox as opposed to the 5-gear one, which is used at the moment by the current teams. Now, I don't know if that could maybe save weight or something, but that could certainly be an advantage to them. So RPM, the number of turns, the actual kind of the rotor can turn per second, has increased with Venturi's motor. So what that could maybe indicate is that, like I said, they're trying to improve the kind of the torque curve of the motor, and also that their torque is gone up by an extra 5 Newton meters compared to what is existing. So I genuinely think that in qualifying, this could be a massive advantage to Venturi, but again, we don't know what the other teams are doing yet.
Apparently, one thing that I've only just seen quickly, I just want to add in, is that Venturi are also supplying the power unit for Dragon.
Oh yes,
I did not know that, but I've just found that out. Yeah.
But I also think where this could really benefit Venturi is if they've got 2 teams running their system, then that means they can also get more data, and if they're friends with each other, Venturi and Dragon, they can say, hey, look, we've actually found that this code works better, and then pass it on to each other and therefore benefit each other in the long term.
It could be embarrassing though if Dragon Racing do beat Venturi in the championship using their own power unit.
I don't think it'd be too embarrassing. It's such an open championship. Dragon can still work on so many other things, and Dragon had a quick car Anyway, Venturi had a very quick car, just they made too many mistakes, and that could be, if they don't fix those mistakes, could easily be, the downfall to Venturi. So, Venturi might be quick, but if they keep making pit stop errors, if they keep making errors with strategy on track, then Dragon Racing can beat them easily.
We do know about the next EV powertrain, but also a few details of the Motomatica. According to Formula E Italia, various reliable sources here in Italy are reporting Trulli Team's new powertrain characteristics for next season. I'm not sure how they would know this if it's not public knowledge, but they're saying 31 kilograms weight, 250 kilowatts max power usage, and a 380 kilowatts overboost available for 2 seconds. Now, considering 250, weren't they thinking, they were saying they were going to lift the maximum power unit, the maximum kilowatt outage that they've used in qualifying to 250. I'm not sure how much good the 380 would do them, unless...
I think it's only in season 3, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
I think also Motomatica were, which is part of this Italian company called the Italian Technomatic Group.
That's where I was getting confused.
And to say that we were, and think that we were ruling out Trulli in the last episode, and now they've got a 380 kilowatt powered engine.
I think though also it's considering that as currently reported, and I think Electric Autosport too, that the Formula E are looking for season 3, instead of having the battery completely open up, but having possibly a new supplier, reportedly Rimac, the Croatian company. But I think with some companies such as Motomatica, this division of the Italian group, they will have already actually been exploring stuff. So I don't know if they're going to be peed off, or if they're going to say, hey, look, we do have the resources and we do want to be making our own battery. So I think that's going to be quite a key thing in negotiations for Formula E, trying to keep costs down, but also not trying to kind of inhibit innovation.
Definitely, that is a very difficult tightrope, and we've seen a lot of series. We've seen a lot of series, not just I'm not thinking specifically of Formula E, but where they've. In the UK, we used to have the UK Formula Renault Championship, national one, and what happened was that people got priced out because they introduced a new car, and the teams couldn't afford it, basically. So the groups dwindled, and they eventually cancelled it, and I think to this day they haven't brought it back. They've put other series that have filled its place. So for the second season, they're not saying, right, build everything. They're just introducing it one step at a time, starting with the power unit. So I think that's definitely the right approach.
Should we talk Next AV next?
Yeah, definitely.
But with Next AV, it's weird because they're not actually really a car company as such yet.
They're entrepreneurs from China.
Exactly, and I think Stephen Liu, the head of Team China, is actually, I think I've heard, is one of the guys behind it. And they, from what I heard on their Twitter account, when I asked them, is that they're a company that's being set up for Formula E, but actually with the intention to build, consumer cars in future years, and that they've
very
got
ambitious.
And they've got quite a few investors behind them. It was weird. In Jack Nicholls' article, he said that they've done racing projects before, but I can't find anything out about that. Though also. Though they are going to have their own kind of Chinese people that they'll be hiring and their own body, they're definitely one of the teams that's will be quite dependent on partners for next year. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of them. So Vishay is one of their partners, and they make thin film resistors which monitor power from the battery to the motor and get it very accurate, and also that's very useful for regenerative braking. So when we've seen all these people getting penalties for max power overuse, that could definitely be something that could help Team China out if they can get this good with the help of Vishay. Next one, Molex. So they make lots of connectors, often used in the automotive sector. So for connecting, for example, like the inverter to the motor, having a good cable, a good connector, and keeping it as lightweight as possible. That could be something that they can definitely work on. OmniGear is a weird one, and they were announced quite early on in the season. They make gearboxes for agriculture, for tractors and stuff. But I believe are going into trying to make kind of more specialist things. And who knows, they do very kind of accurate, precise manufacturing.
Well,
so maybe
at least PK Jr. will be able to do a bit of grass cutting then.
Yeah,
needs
bit
to.
of hard work.
They'll put a little combine harvester in the back.
I can't imagine that. Next one, Mouser. I think that's more just a sponsorship thing and not much of a provider. But if they were to provide, they just a distributor of lots of kind of small electrical components. So maybe they can get a few deals there. But I think they also might have helped PK out through his career. So maybe that's
that's what it links back to.
maybe.
Mr.
Next
People.
one is Rational Motion, which is weird. They actually worked with Toyota Motorsport in Germany, and they've been one of the people to put the most pictures on Twitter because they've been helping out with lots of the testing and development, and they specialise in motors and hybrid systems. So this is right up their street. Anyone listening to this should check them out because they're quite an interesting company. And I think that's it. That's it. Actually, like I said, I think the next EV will be hiring people directly, and it says that in the next few weeks we'll get some more information about the company or soon-to-be company and their kind of mission objectives and stuff. They were one of the first people to kind of announce their quote philosophy as such because they're going to use 2 motors instead of 1, which I think surprised a lot of people. But I think the idea between that is you can have 2 motors, and if one gets hot, you kind of switch it out, or also to get efficiency between the different motors. So you could have 1 motor with a torque curve higher up and 1 motor with a torque curve lower down, and then mix the power between both of them to try and get a kind of ultimate power.
Yeah, well, you might get ultimate power, but the funny thing of that is I would have thought having 2 motors means there's extra weight, surely.
Yes, and it's not even like it's going to give them traction control or torque vectoring because it's banned. So it's a weird one, and it was weird also that motorsport.com, I think probably wrongly, reported lots of the teams are going to be doing it. But that will be interesting to play out. I think probably that will help in the race, but not help in qualifying, is my guess, but I'll probably be proved wrong.
The dual motor weighs 4 stone, so it's a pretty hefty chunk to put in the car. So which you're quite right when you're trying to keep it as weight, and you're looking at Botomatica 31 kilograms, and you've got 4 stone, dual. It's a big difference. So. It will, as I read in a very good article about it, it was, they're really, but to be fair, Stephen Lew is pretty confident that this is going to work. They are hugely confident. They've been testing it for a while.
Trade-off as well, isn't it? Because if it's heavier and it gives more power that sort of compensates for the weight, then I guess it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, which is also interesting, is like, even though they have a dual motor, it's sort of like how Joe explained, they want to sort of like feed the power to. It doesn't mean that they're going to have more power. It's not like that because it wouldn't work as much.
No.
They would like to keep the cooling, otherwise the thing's just going to overheat and explode. But Stephen Lew, when I spoke to him in London, he was very, very calmly optimistic, let's put it that way. And, he said, we've been testing this for a while, it's working well, everything's, exactly how we predicted it to go. They're pretty confident in how it's going to go. Yes, the dual motor is quite heavy compared to what Venturi's powertrain will be, but they're confident that it will work and give them that advantage. So that's why they went for it. And I don't think teams will go for it because if you can't get it to work, you were lugging around something really heavy. It's like the kinetic energy recovery system when you lose it.
Oh, yeah.
You're just carrying weight dead weight that's no good to you. It's exactly the same, but Next EV believe 100% that this will work, and they've got it working.
Just before we move from Next EV, PK Jr. has released a video of him testing the car. So if you want a little visual source there, I'll link it to you in the podcast video.
Visual, but not audio. This is what also Mahindra do. Is they put music over it because they don't want people to hear gear shifts. Or I think Venturi were the only people to put on a 6-second video of their test.
The one thing that, talking about Next EV and their numerous Chinese partners reminds me of is on the other side of the Atlantic, we have the Andretti's Formula E team, who have got their quite a few partners of their own. And I wondered how they were looking in terms of what we know about what they're doing.
Well, you guys did talk about it briefly last week, but I thought I'd just run over a couple of things again. And what's quite interesting with Andretti is they have no background at all, but they're actually setting up a whole new arm of the Andretti kind of big bus. They've got their own kind of little aisle now just for technology development called Andretti Technologies.
Isn't Simona Di Silvestro the partner that was associated with her that they brought in for the London ePrix that turned the cars orange? I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, shut up now.
Connectivity.
But yeah, TE Connectivity make lots of sensors, and they actually work with Andretti and IndyCar already, so they're quite good partners with Andretti. But they make lots of really kind of high-tech sensors, which could definitely play an advantage to their Season 2 car. But also, I think Andretti, with their new technologies arm, they are hiring people directly, I believe, because they don't only want to help out with FE, but also potentially their Indy program and other racing series and automotive projects. Also, they're working with Houston Mechatronics, which is a startup kind of spin-off of some ex-NASA guys and girls. And they've actually been working on this project since October 2014. So lots of testing in Texas, and I think at Andretti's facility as well.
Okay, what?
With Andretti, though, you can't forget Houston Mechatronics. It's a shared, technically now, it's like a shared company. When you see the logo for Andretti, you've got Houston Mechatronics also underneath the Andretti thing. They've been working with Andretti since October, developing, testing the new powertrain. One of the guys told me that from Houston Mechatronics that the road has been pretty rocky in terms of testing. They found a lot of bugs within the powertrain, but they were happy that they did start work so early, like they did in October. I was amazed when they told me that they were starting work in October, because we'd only done a month of the season. They were already thinking about Season 2 and what they could do, which I thought was amazing. But so they've been working with them since October, and they found a lot of bugs, and they said we've had to de-rig all those bugs. But he said, thankfully, we've had that so early. So I think Andretti, going into pre-season testing, will be quite strong, and they have a good team around them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're up there.
And I think that's exactly what shows up. Some of the teams have been doing well, and Trulli, for example, they just started their program, from the sound of it, too late, and that's why they haven't even done any track testing yet, as I think you reported, Jack.
Yep.
So they will, though they've done some dyno testing's one thing, but when you've actually got the resistance and the vibration,
the stresses and strains, the really bumpy Formula E track. Yeah.
I hope that Trulli and Motomatica, the Italian guys, do pull it together. But should we move on to DS Virgin?
Oh, yes, of course.
But DS Virgin, so for all of you who don't know, DS was actually just a kind of sub-brand in a way of Citroen.
Yeah.
You
Citroen
had like
DS3, Citroen DS5, etc.
Citroen Nintendo DS.
Ha.
That's the only one I know. I think Nintendo had more to do with that.
But actually, it's not only a technological venture for Citroen, but it is a marketing venture, because right as we speak now is the transition time. This year is the transition time where they're trying to spin off DS, as a separate brand to Citroen. So it's a big branding time for PSA, the group who own Peugeot, Citroen, and DS. Now, at the moment, they are running it under the Citroen Racing arm of the company. But rumour has it that they're considering spinning it off as DS Racing as a completely separate entity. But if you look at any of their pictures from testing, they're all wearing Citroen Racing T-shirts. It's also, I found it weird that DS are going into it, because they have like one kind of regular hybrid version of their, I think it's the DS5. But apart from that, they've had very little experience or anything into electric motors. So maybe part of DS being spun off is that DS are maybe going to go into electric cars in future. Very quickly, they also have apparently redesigned almost all the rear suspension, which is one of the later introductions that they said would be okay for Season 2, because lots of people were having problems with the suspension, especially towards the early side of Season 1. Also, in Miami, I think it was Alex Ty said that the majority of people were going to remove the gearbox, which, well, Venturi haven't, so we know they haven't, and we know Aguri is sticking with the current thing. But maybe that's a hint. I don't know how near the beginning of the development they were when he said that, but that will be interesting to see. If they have no gearbox, apparently they have a bigger motor, but it's weightier, but then they don't have the gearbox. So there's always a bit of a compromise there. And also, I think quite a while back it was leaked that they were trying out a CVT gearbox, which doesn't have fixed ratios, but a kind of like a band that you have an infinite number of gear ratios, but it is actually banned at the moment. So lots of the teams apparently are campaigning for that to be allowed, maybe for season 3 and beyond. That's all I've got to say actually about DS Virgin. What about you guys?
Well, there was a little bit of a story a while back that because if Citroën was going to be involved in the World Rally Championship, Formula E, and the World Touring Car Championship, that one of the programs was going to get cut. Because they said they committed to just having 2 programs in 2 different categories of motorsport, and there was a big fear that it was going to be the World Rally Championship that's got cut. I'm not sure if it will now. I think that seems to have died down a bit, so I'm not sure if maybe the World Rally Championship program is going to be secure now, or definitely the debate was because Formula E is their new one. They're not going to cut it down before they've started it, presumably. So
it's also, especially if they're going to spin it off as a separate entity as DS Racing, then they would still only have 2 Citroën things, and they'll have a separate.
So by that logic,
yeah.
So
also with DS's backing being French, they've been pushing apparently for having a French driver, second seat, and Jev, or I don't know. Jack said Roman Grosjean, which was a peculiar one.
Hasn't he?
I didn't say Grosjean.
Jack Nicholls said Grosjean.
Jack Nicholls.
Jack Nicholls said Grosjean. Oh, okay.
He's just trying to stir the pot. I wouldn't worry.
Should we talk about Mahindra briefly? There's not much to say about Mahindra.
Yeah.
Because they've been very secretive. But
I do know. Even when I talked to Karen Chandok at the competition a few days before London, he said that he like we say, he hadn't been involved that much in the whole testing thing. So he gave me a few limited details, a sort of piecemeal, basically. But but it was clear that he'd been kind of kept out of the loop.
I know that
testing at that
they've been doing testing at isn't it Dunsfold, the Top Gear test track?
Of course, yeah.
And also then more recently with in Spain with Campos.
Yeah, it has a funky name, this new car, the M2 Electro.
But they've I think since they're split with Carling, that not only are they working with Campos, but I think I read in one of the articles that Mahindra are wanting to hire more people directly, so they're kind of less dependent on a third party, as well as taking some engineers directly from the Mahindra Riva company. So I don't know, but probably most of you guys think of the kind of old school electric vehicle as being the G-Wiz, or the Riva I, it was known internationally. But the G-Wiz, the makers of the G-Wiz was a company called Riva, which Mahindra acquired in 2010. So what surprised me when I read an article on motorsport.com saying that they were just going to use a kind of upgraded version of the McLaren Hewland system, I was really surprised, because Mahindra have such they I think it's $13.5 billion conglomerate they are, and they have all these Mahindra Riva guys. They make an electric car in India that Karen Chandok actually owns. I'm surprised about that. So it's interesting, and I think Mahindra want to have more of a kind of direct influence on the team for future.
Anyway, there's one more team we haven't really talked about.
Two more. Well, Renault, we know nothing, literally nothing. Apart from that, Renault do know a lot of stuff. They're one of the biggest manufacturers of electric vehicles, and I'm pretty sure they were one of the biggest in Europe.
Yeah, we've just been talking about the Renault Twizy, so yeah.
And the Renault Zoe also has had upgrades recently.
Yes, it is the Renault Zoe.
The Renault Zoe has had. Renault have been working recently to make their motors more efficient, and they have done that. So I'm sure that Renault will have a good body of people who know their stuff that they'll be able to apply.
So we have our 2 manufacturers. Just before we move on to Abt Audi, I guess Audi's kind of manufacturer, but we'll get on to Abt a bit later. But we have Renault and we have Citroën in the form of the DS brand. Is 2 French manufacturers. We have the Paris ePrix. Is there a sense of competition between the 2 of them, do you think, or is it just kind of they're just another team?
I think there will be competition. Also, considering Citroën, personally, I was so surprised at their entry because of their lack of EV stuff. So if Citroën do well at this project and they apply themselves and get a good bunch of people together, I think Renault don't want to be Renault feel like they can lead in this, not as they've been struggling in F1. I don't think Renault will want Citroën to show them up. So I do think there will be a bit of tension, as well as everyone wanting to, push forward the development. I do think there will be some tension. So at Scheifler Audi Sport, wordy, it's ridiculous. But actually, when people were talking about, Audi are coming into it, Audi aren't really going to be the manufacturer here, or at least not for season.
Audi is more of their specialist team. They also run one of Audi's top DTM squads, I think.
Yeah, and Audi Sport as such, they're not having much of a technical influence on the Season 2 powertrain. They're more kind of offering bit of overview and testing facilities, stuff like that. I don't think they're putting in engineers as such. Scheifler are the people who are actually leading the development of the electric motor now. I didn't know about them, but actually they specialise in bearings. They make the bearing in the middle of the London Eye, if you want the fact. But they have, in the last couple of years, been doing electric car development, hybrid powertrains, transmissions, all that kind of stuff. They're actually trying to make that a kind of new arm of the business. And they have done some prototypes by ripping out like Ford Fiestas and putting in electric motors and stuff. And
I wonder why Ford aren't getting involved.
Yes, well, Ford haven't had a massive electric program yet, but yeah. I think like Citroën, people don't necessarily have to, but it's a good way for them to tread the waters. But Scheifler, anyway, I'll be very quick, but they have used 2-speed powertrains in the past, so that would be an interesting one if they don't take out the gearbox but have a kind of compact, very basic 2-speed gearbox. How that's going to work. I think the kind of big, the big kind of dilemma here, which is going to be interesting to see as the season pans out, is: do you want big, heavy dual motor? Do you want a big single-speed motor, or do you want compact motor with like a 4- or 5-speed gearbox? So I think that's going to be the kind of main talking point. But we've gone through all the teams actually, apart from Amelin, who we know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, Amelin, Aguri, Subaru Formula have been very transparent about their plans, and of course they were the first guys who did the experimental sort of 150 kilowatt race power outage. I said it was
170.
170, yeah, because it was going to be increased by about 20 kilowatts. For the race trim, just to make them a little bit faster.
But I think my main concern for Aguri is, all right, they say the current package is good, which it is, and it's they've got it to be reliable, and they can make it more reliable and more efficient to an extent with code. But I think, considering the McLaren motor was not made for efficiency, it was made for performance. If other teams such as Venturi, as Jack G talked about in his article, if they find really good ways of efficiency, like also Next Dev are pushing for, and all the rest, and cooling, Aguri can't change this. They're going to be stuck with a powertrain that, all right, it will be at that powertrain's best, but I don't think I'm concerned it's not going to be able to match the more efficient powertrains that are going to be coming on from other manufacturers. Well,
they've not got a manufacturer backing them. The option was stick with the current powertrain, try and develop your own and bring a few partners in, or grab Venturi's powertrain, I guess.
But as I said in the first podcast, you never know, it might turn into a bit of a McLaren situation in Formula One, because McLaren, they've switched to the Honda engine, and they've been pissed for, yes, we've just seen Fernando Alonso get 5th place, but lots of shit happened in Hungary. Yeah, but they might have saved their bacon. They might have saved their bacon, or they might have done a really bad thing.
Or saved their bacon for testing in the first few races. But then it will be interesting to see how it changes throughout the season.
Just before we move on, we talked about the 10 teams. There was a rumor in the past couple of hours. I'm not sure how substantial it is, that there was a 11th team that applied for the or that was thinking of applying for the.
It's called Picko Motorsport.
There was an 11th team. The article I read basically speculated that it may have been Jaguar. I wasn't so sure, because the Jaguar Land Rover group, Jaguar cars, basically. I wasn't so sure how substantial, because they there's a little bit of a statement from them saying that we have no desire to go into a motorsport program at this stage, blah, 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 we're just selling cars right now. And there was a little rumour that Williams Advanced Engineering was involved as well, which of course are the guys fighting with Rimac to do the batteries for Season 3. There might be a few others involved as well. We talked about Trulli and the Motomatica and the graphene stuff they're putting in the batteries. The final piece we have is the Donnington test, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to. So I'll just let us all know what the dates are. So it's Monday the 10th of August and Tuesday 11th, Monday 17th and Tuesday 18th, and then Monday 24th and Tuesday 25th. Those are the 6 dates that we have for testing. All teams are going to be in action, from what we understand. Not sure if there are going to be any test races like before. So from what I remember from the first test, I remember that it was Buemi and the EDAMS team that were universally considered to be the quickest, and everyone thought they were going to at the start of the season, and they were, to be fair. Do you think it's going to EDAMS are still the team to beat essentially going in, or do you think it's going to now with PK as drivers' champion, it's actually next EV, but there's question marks over the heavier powertrain?
I think that Jack will know much more, but I think from my end, I have no idea what's going to happen. You never know. PK might be lagging down at the back or something like that.
Oh, I like that.
yes. I know you would have got
maybe
a
they would have bought
him.
Maybe they would have bought the cake car because there's the picture of him slicing his birthday cake.
Yeah.
We couldn't get the motor's still in development, Nelson. We've got the twin motor, but
you can eat it though.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Pico says that I might know many things more. The truth is, I don't. We all know the technology that they're implementing, but I don't have a clue who's going to be quickest when they hit the track.
Personally, I don't know, and it also depends on which mechanical philosophy works and which one doesn't. It could just be a drop of the needle, drop the hat moment, and one of the teams say, "Oh crap, we've screwed up." But
remember, Donington is an anomaly as well compared to the street circuits.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to put my finger in the door and say either Venturi or Next EV, depending on which kind of approach works.
I don't know about you guys, but personally, my money's on DS Virgin. I think Sam Bird, in particular, will be quite strong, and it'll be very interesting to see whoever they get in the second seat there. Because I think they're going to join the top group because
I think
my money is on a team.
I had someone laughing in the background. And I just think,
Wasn't me.
Sam Bird's not going to do well, Edward.
if I had to put money on it, I'd go for Andretti.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of different guys. It's still very open even after the first season. Even though one of our worries was that with it becoming not being a spec series anymore, was that there would be a hierarchy. It's still, you get the sense it's very open, which is good.
Well, we don't know that until they hit the track, though. They could turn up and Venturi could be 3 seconds quicker than the rest.
Going into season 3, I think we'll all have a better idea of who is where and everything, because it will just be a development off season 2. And I know season 2 is a development off season 1, but it's like everyone doesn't know. Well, even Jack doesn't know.
And that's it. If I don't know, then no one knows.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jack's crystal ball doesn't work.
According to Picko's theory, if I don't know, nobody knows.
Exactly.
So, okay, well, there's a lot to look forward to in Formula E. I hope you've really enjoyed the podcast so far. Just so you know, the quick rundown just of all the Twitter, how you can contact us and everything. I'm at Edward J. Hunter on Twitter.
I'm at Picko Motorsport on Twitter, and I'm on the Facebook page. Just tag me in a post. I will not let any of you add me on Facebook. But actually, think about it. If you do have Reddit, I am on the Reddit feed as well at F1 Picko. But I don't know many people who use Reddit.
And Jack's account, Jack Giordmaina's account, is just at Jack Giordmaina. But he doesn't use it very much, so just go on the Formula E Zone account if you can.
That's where you'll find me.
Yeah, and Joe Jones?
I'm Joe Panic, spelled PANIKK, don't ask why, on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm just Joe Jones on Facebook.
And of course, you can keep up track with the Formula E Addicts page on Twitter, which is at Formula Addicts, and of course the Facebook page, which Pico mentioned. Not sure when we'll be doing the next one, in the middle of testing perhaps, because it's going to take place over the whole month. I'd like to say I just myself put on a personal, really great thanks to the Addicted to Formula One page and the in particular folks at Down for Australia, because they gave me a little bit of inspiration to do the podcast in the first place. I don't think I mentioned it before, but I guess that's all that really remains, and goodbye for now.